I showed you yesterday how Anthony Albanese had changed his tack on the China dilemma. Here we have China hurting Australia, deliberately hurting our barley farmers, meat exporters, our wine growers and coal exporters. It's doing us damage to try to teach us a lesson, presumably. It's slandering us as a nation with sickening social media posts. And for a moment, the Labor leader was going to just stay on Australia's side, not give succor to the bullies from Beijing, not make excuses to a communist dictatorship that cares nothing for openness, democracy, fairness or human rights. That's the only defensible stance. At a time like this, if you, as a politician, blame Australia's handling of the relationship, you make excuses for the communist thugs. There's nothing about the relationship that Labor says it would do differently. There's no aspect of China's criticism of Australia, its unfair criticism of Australia, that Labor would agree with. But as I showed you yesterday, Albo couldn't help himself. Each way Albo, as Paul Murray has dubbed him, had to try and blame our government, blame Australia for these problems too. It's victim blaming. And today, he didn't walk back from his criticism, he just tried to justify it.
The relationship with China isn't something that's deteriorated this week. It's been there for a period of time. The deterioration, the government, we have said, needs to have a strategy to deal with that.
This is not wise. I told you the moment this spat escalated that there would be political and business interests eager to kowtow, eager to please Beijing. The Labor leader couldn't resist trying to make a domestic political point. This from the leader of a party that lost a senator just a couple of years ago because that senator was secretly taking money from China and then running Beijing's lines in media conferences. Albanese's words won't please many Australians, but they will please Beijing. They will be used by the communists to bolster their attacks on Australia.
Well, in relation to Mr Albanese, I'm disappointed but not surprised. You can't have each-way bets on national security and what Australia does to protect its national interests. That's really all I have to say about that matter. Australia's policies and plans and the rules that we make for our own country are made here in Australia according to our needs and our interests, and we'll continue to do that.
I reckon this is a terrible mistake by Anthony Albanese. He needs to remember he's the alternative Prime Minister. His task, tough task that it is to convince people to make him the Prime Minister, to let him be the one dealing with other nations on our behalf. So, Albo, when there's a choice about whose side you need to be on, China's or Australia's, you need to be unambiguous, mate. Now, across the Pacific, there was a worrying sign from Joe Biden today too when it comes to China. And I've mentioned before, I reckon China is a bit more strident at the moment, partly because the US is going through this leadership vacuum across the transition, and partly because it knows Biden will be weaker than Donald Trump. And today, Joe Biden confirmed it. In an interview with Thomas Friedman in the New York Times, the Green Left Bible of the US, Biden said, "The best China strategy, I think, is one which gets every one of our, or at least what used to be our allies, on the same page. It's going to be a major priority for me in the opening weeks of my presidency to try to get us back on the same page with our allies." This is deeply disturbing. First, Biden believes his own puerile political rhetoric about the US having lost allies. That's simply not true. It's not lost a single ally under Donald Trump. But more importantly, Biden suggests that US policy needs to be adjusted to get more countries on board. There's no equivocation from US allies in the Pacific on China. There's no lack of resolve from Australia or Japan when it comes to China, nor from the UK either on the other side of the globe. So what's Biden proposing to do? Weaken his stance so the Europeans or others in Southeast Asia come on board? The US needs to stay strong on China, not look to concoct some sort of mealy-mouthed EU or UN-style accommodation. If the world takes a backward step to China now, we're going to rue the day for decades to come.